Hello, friends. It's BWI Live. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. Nate Bauer with me today, and we are just over a week until Penn State football starts the 2025 season with training camp. Now, I know for some people the season doesn't start till the week of the first game, but for you football addicts out there, it starts this week with the day we're previewing camp battles, and we're getting into our conversation about the conversation. Nate Bauer talking to James Franklin, and an excellent series of articles that he's done over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We're going to be talking about some of those things to wet your whistle, see if you want to go read them yourself. So Nate, welcome to the show. How are you doing this fine Tuesday, the last full week before the storm?
I'm good. I'm personally great. I get a little nervous isn't the right word. It's just, there's like a good and a bad, right? There's a rush to the football season once you get into it and you get into the groove, and it's great, right? This is something that actually James Franklin talked about in the interview that is has been posted on our message board and is also in our preseason magazine, which is on newsstands now. I think it's at the student bookstore, correct?
Yes, it is.
And you can buy it
Saturday.
There you go. And you can buy it. So if you're in State College, you can get it there. If you are not in State College, you can get it at bluewhiteonline.com. I strongly encourage you guys to check it out. It's awesome. I got it on Friday afternoon, cracked it open, and just am continually blown away by the work that Matt Herb does for our magazine. It's just, and obviously there are other people with him from Komen who do that. But in any case, that's a long way for me to say what Franklin talks about, which is the cyclical nature of the season and kind of how it aligns with, or I should say the full calendar year and how it aligns with a football game in the sense that the first quarter is kind of the winter, the second quarter is spring practices, the third quarter is summer, right? Yeah. And then the fourth quarter is the season itself. And so that's a little bit of how I also view this, which is to say the third quarter of the summer is kind of nice for us.
Yeah, it is.
It's low stress. Not nobody's yelling at each other. I do a lot of community engagement, obviously, on our website with our message boards.
Nobody's yelling at each other, Nate. Have you been on the internet? Just this morning, I was talking to somebody who had some exception to something I said about Zane Durant and wanted to yell at me about it. And I was like, I don't know why we're doing this. It's July 22nd. Can we just chill? But no. Here's how. So this is how I feel. James Franklin's talked about this before too, and our job roughly mirrors them, minus all of the responsibility, intensity, and all those things. But our work hours are similar because we're covering what they do. So he's called it the being in the submarine before, right? I view the start of the Penn State football season as the end of my calendar year. There are two things in life that I have seen as a time travel vehicle: alcohol and the football season, because both of them will erase time for you. You'll just wake up and it's oh God, it's February. It's 2026. Now, that's a good thing because, our job is fun. So let's lay some ground rules here. We're not complaining, we're describing. I finally got to the point, because if you do it right, anything is difficult. Anything is hard. If you put enough hours and time and stress and onto your body. I got to the point this weekend where I was like, you know what? I'm now ready. I got bored. I also ran out of money to do projects. So that's the other thing. Is I ran through all of the money I saved during football season. I redid the deck. I redid the backyard. I planted a bunch of plants. I got a garden. Just a whole bunch of things that I'd save up for during the off season. We're out of time. We're out of money. We're ready to go for Penn State football season. So it's here in 9 days, right? Wednesday?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's the 30th is the first day of camp. Obviously, I think they report on Sunday, which is the 27th, maybe. Yeah. So no, I don't know.
Yes.
Like I
yes.
it's one of those things where I want to make sure, as you just said, like it's exciting and it's fun and can't wait to get into it. But also, I feel a little, if I may, Scotty Scheffler-esque of like, I also have a family. There's other stuff. There's other stuff. I like to golf, and so that's gonna go away a little bit.
I had my
here.
first conversation where I believe somebody was inviting me to golf, and they asked
Oh.
the question, "Do you golf?" And I was like, "Oh no,
Frank.
no."
No, that's where you're wrong. Everyone golfs.
Oh, okay. I
Everyone
just
golfs.
didn't want to be that guy that shows up, be like, "Yeah, I golf, and I don't own my own clubs, and I'm going to make you like the first 8 holes are going to cost you your life. Like you're going to hate me by the end." The point is to have a good time, not to go there and be constantly like silently muttering under your breath and rolling your eyes at me. Which is happening to a certain percentage of the fan base that's like, what is this fun that you guys are having talking to each other? Let's get to this. Let's get to the news. Let's get to the stories. Yep. The Penn State football. Big Ten Media Days.
Let's do it.
They're starting today, right?
Yes.
I know Greg Pickle is flying out right now.
Yes.
He is currently in the air
on
the way to Big Ten Media Days.
Yeah, it is now a 3-day event, and Penn State's day is Wednesday.
Okay. What do you want to know? What are you? You've talked to a lot of these people already. You've had the conversations we'll talk about later and conversations about the conversation. But like, there's still always new insights that perk up from different interactions with the media. I guess what's on your mind for Media Days this year? Is there anything that you've been curious about when it comes to football in general or Penn State football?
Yeah, look, this is a little bit of an exercise in futility. We're talking, that's how we make a living. And there's a lot to discuss, sure. But until things start happening, which won't be until August 30, there's a lot of repetition to this. And so, and anybody who's following us and is tuned into this show, obviously I see it in the, in the chat here, like you guys are hardcore. Nothing is going to be discussed at Big Ten Media Day that hasn't been discussed already this offseason. Yeah. And those things are including Penn State being arguably the best team in the league going into the season. And to me, that's a fascinating conversation to have, a fascinating dynamic. That hasn't happened, I don't think, in any of the years that I've covered Penn State football. Maybe 2017.
That was the one that came to mind. But I think that even then we knew they were talented, but there were still obvious issues on the roster. Like there were still areas where you could say like, this isn't I don't feel like they've come into a roster, even with its holes now, as bulletproof as they have in previous years, or at least with addressing all these things the way they have.
Yeah. And look, I'm firmly on the record here that I think there are still quite a few questions for this team to answer, right? Sure. It's just the notion to me that the defending national champion, I mean, the Cleveland.com poll came out yesterday and had Penn State, and it was by one vote, right? So one more vote for Penn State than Ohio State and predicted order of finish. Penn State 1, Ohio State 2 in the league. Like that's
never happened during the time I've covered Penn State.
I just don't expect that. Like I don't know. I'm just curious to know. Like I feel like I've got blinders on. Maybe I'm too close to it. I'm not sure, but I'm just curious to know what other people are seeing. Not just at Penn State. I see all of the reasons for people to be excited about Penn State and to think Penn State's going to be really, really good. I don't necessarily see that with Ohio State in terms of why they're expected to fall off.
All the way to behind. Second, right?
Well, true. That's fair. But what is being said in that conversation is that Penn State will beat Ohio State this season.
Yeah.
And at Ohio State.
Hey,
are you sure? I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm just saying, are you sure?
We put it into we all put our predictions into the magazine. I might have predicted that. Like, that might have been part of my prediction. Maybe.
That they're going to win at Ohio State.
Yeah.
They could.
Maybe.
They could.
They could. Yeah, they could.
I just don't see how I mean, look, anybody can pick whatever they want. Like, again, all of this is stupid. Who cares? It doesn't matter. We can all have our opinions. I just think that Ohio State is poised to continue to be really good. When you have look, and again, PFF, take it or leave it, but like Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs I think they're the 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 overall best players in the country in college football. Like, that seems significant to me.
Yeah.
I don't think Will Howard's any good at playing football. So
right. And that's, he's not bad at playing football, but to your point, like, in the matchup of Drew Allar versus Will Howard, Drew Allar should have had the advantage and should have been perceived as the better quarterback because of his ability to throw the football to other players. Like, we all forget that Will Howard missed a wide open Jeremiah Smith for a long touchdown over Elliott Washington, and it just fades into the ether of time because it was an incompletion, but Jeremiah Smith was wide open and was going to the end zone. And Will Howard missed him on that play. Does Julian Sayin miss him on that play? And that's kind of the conversation about where Penn State sits right now, is because I value this. I think you value this. During this time of year, we value the things we know, the things that we can count as facts. We know that Drew Allar is a good quarterback. We know that Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, they're all seniors. We value the understanding of those players getting better because they're still under the age of 25. Like, they're still developing as human beings, even though we see them as adults from the time they're 18. So there's a bias, there's a lean towards veteran quarterbacks coming back, especially, but generally, as James Franklin talked to you about, the older team. Could Julian Sayin turn into the next Trevor Lawrence? Yeah, sure. But we don't know that. Would it be reasonable to expect that? That's the whole conference this year, right? Bryce Underwood at Michigan, Julian Sayin at Ohio State, Dante Moore at Oregon. Allar is the veteran in the conference. And I think that to that point, it should be a reasonable expectation that in a game, if it were to come down to quarterback versus quarterback, which is how we do this a lot of the time, Allar should be it would be ridiculous if Allar was not the favorite. That would be confirming all the things that his detractors say about him, that against first-year starting players, context of the talent around him aside, like those player to player, he wouldn't be the better player. He should be as a senior.
I think for quarterbacks, that's extraordinarily important context. Like, you can't say context aside about like the position that facilitates all of the other playmakers doing the things that you need to do to win football games. So we're gonna see what happens. This is as and again, like, I'm not gonna die on this hill over a couple of votes putting Penn State 1 and Ohio State 2 in the conference standings. In terms of preseason predictions, like, it doesn't matter. But I think that this program, this team has a very solid foundation, has a breadth of talent that is very powerful, right? That should be to Penn State's benefit. The fact that they're all older is to Penn State's benefit, absolutely. But still has, like, I mean, flatly has to win. I mean, I'm hearing it come out of my mouth, and I kind of hate myself for saying it. But, like,
that you can't believe you're saying the thing.
They have to win the big game. Like, I mean, yes, the other games are big too. Boise State is a significant win. SMU is a significant win. They have not beaten the marquee brand in college football in a long time. Right. It has been really since, I think, Michigan whiteout 2019
It sounds about right.
for a top 20-ish Michigan team. Like they're gonna have to knock somebody off. They're gonna have to beat somebody who's really good and at the same level, or better than them. Like that's the reality. Is there's going to be somebody out there that Penn State is going to face this season who is going, if they want to win a national championship, they're going to see somebody who's better than them.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen? Like that will take a stride on what they've accomplished so far.
Kevin Payne's here in the chat, and that's significant. Kevin is a regular here on the show. He said, been a minute since I watched the live stream. Great work, as always. Donate to the channel. Always appreciate people who do that. If you want to get in the reflexive muscle of donating the channel for the post-game show and all those things coming up in about a month or whatever, no one's going to stop you. But obviously not needed to have the conversation here on the BWI live show and on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We just always appreciate Kevin for somebody who's a regular here and is very supportive of us. So glad to have you back. Speaking of people who are very supportive of us, Nate, tell us about some beer. Tell us about Antifragile.
Antifragile, downtown State College, Calder Way, East Calder Way. Best beer in State College. Just held were main sponsors of the Hoppy Valley Brewers Fest. I heard it was a great time. Sorry for those of you who were looking for us. Next year we will do better, and we will be there so that we can say hi to some of you guys who share the same interest as us, which is Penn State football and beer. As you can see here, if you're watching on YouTube, they also have kombucha. Out front, they have Uncle John's, which is the best cheesesteak in State College. Like I keep saying it, and it sounds like hyperbole. These are legitimate truths. Excellent cheesesteaks, excellent beer, rotating selection of beer. They do brew everything in-house, which is awesome, and they're expanding their operation. So if you get a chance to go down to Antifragile Brewing Company, check it out, do it. If you're in town anytime in the next couple of weeks, and obviously during the football season, Friday afternoon is a great time to go, and a time where typically you may see us.
I was going to say, you never know who you're going to see down there on a Friday afternoon checking out Antifragile. Yeah, make it a part of your game day weekend, and it's a awesome spot. And it's pretty close to the stadium. It's on that west side of town where you're not as far away. So if you want to just walk up to the stadium, obviously it's uphill and it's a bit of a hike. But, I mean, come on. I mean, most of us can handle that. Especially after you have a belly full of cheesesteak and you got all the energy in the world.
Yep.
Always appreciate Antifragile for being a sponsor here in the show. Glad that Hoppy Valley Brewers Fest went well. Like you said, I felt bad when I got a text on Saturday. And I always have the out of, well, my wife and I can't drink beer, but we could still go hang out. That was ridiculous of me to not even consider that.
You can have kombucha, right?
My bad. That's a mulligan on my part. Next year, we're definitely going to get that done. Maybe we need that time travel to go back like in the SEC shorts to make sure we can fix some of those mistakes. But speaking of, if you haven't seen that, go check it out because it's about NIL. NIL is going to be a massive topic at Big Ten Media Days, of course, and you're the best person to talk to about NIL and these situations and circumstances because you can sketch an outline of the conversation or what are the important things to ask as opposed to, just the run-of-the-mill hey, NIL's a thing, and then you throw throw it at the person and then they have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Which is what I just did to you.
Yeah. It remains there's two pieces of this, right? The first is, hey, this is what it is, and this is what it should be. Those aren't the same thing. So I don't think a fan-funded or mega donor-funded model for college athletics is right. I think it's the way it's always been, whether it's above board or below. Either way, you've had individuals or groups of individuals who have staked college football programs for sure, but athletic departments, right? That's how it works is based on giving. So you have these massive bureaucracies and operations that generate a ton of money, but also spend a ton of money. And to get it over the top, you need that extra support. Obviously, what's going to be interesting, and I've seen this in a couple of places, right? This conversation that's happening of the $20.5 million cap, and that all of the schools that signed on to the House settlement, of which everyone did, are thereby agreeing to cap the compensation, the revenue share of paying out student athletes across all sports for all of these different athletic departments at $20.5 million. Rhett Lashley, the SMU coach, had a comment about like, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't want to mess it up. And in fact, I'll take it off of his mouth, but I've seen it in a few places. Brian Kelly has said this about like the integrity and the honorableness of the sport relies on college football coaches following the spirit of that rule and vowing to not go above and beyond their allotment.
Oh, that'll work.
It's
that'll work great. That's never been a problem.
It's correct, T-Frank. Like that's never been a problem. It's always been a problem. I asked James Franklin this, and you can see his answer. I think today it's going to run on the site about the fact that throughout my perception of college football and how it operates is always these organizations that know the line, right? What is the line of that you can push up to, right? And then once you go beyond it, you are in violation of rules, right? College football has always been about finding the line, finding the most favorable interpretation of the line, and then dancing all over it. And the programs that get as close as they can to that line without being so far over the line are like, it's not a coincidence that so many teams have minor self-reported violations on the back half of winning a national championship or having these highest levels of success. It's because they're willing to push the limit as far as they possibly can. And the thing that James Franklin said, I asked him about that. The thing that he said that was so interesting was, he was like, you don't understand how important your compliance guy is to the overall abilities to succeed in college football. Doesn't like if you have a hardline conservative approach out of your NCAA compliance director who's just going to stand in the way and say, nope, I can't do that. It's over the line. This is over my interpretation of what the NCAA rules say. Like, you're going to have a hard time. It's going to be difficult for you to succeed on this stage. If you have a guy who's like, well, it's borderline, it's debatable, we'll go with it, right? And then
see what happens.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission, right? Like that general tenet.
Yeah.
Then you are in better position to have success. So yeah, it's just like, I think that is the next frontier of what this NIL and post-house settlement, until everything gets settled, down, which it's not going to anytime soon. But until that happens, it's really about every program's appetite to dance with the line and get as close to it, go over it, do whatever you need to do to one, maintain your ability to sleep at night, but also get as much funding as you possibly can to build out your roster, because that's what everybody else is doing.
Those two things are related, by the way, because if you don't feel like you have a good enough roster as a coach, you will not sleep at night. So there's also that side of how do I sleep at night, of what keeps me up at night on the football field, and then morally what keeps me up. And again, it's why when we say we mirror their jobs, we don't have to deal with any of that. We just get to talk about it. which I always enjoy talking to Nate about these big picture topics here on the show, getting his perspective and getting kind of an honest view of all these things, as opposed to, maybe some of the other aspects of it, of like, just the why isn't Penn State spending more money, as opposed to like, well, let's talk about the whole concept of having to spend the money and where it is anyway. All of that leads to the players you have on the roster. The players you have on the roster generally help you determine whether or not you're going to win a game, and you have to decide which one of those players you're going to play. This is a very long transition into, we're talking now about the next round of camp battles. Some of these maybe will surprise you that they're on the list, but given what we've heard this offseason, I thought it was important to talk about some of them. So we're getting to the next round of camp battles this week, featuring the offense. Now, don't turn away, because next week, right before camp, we're going to be doing the headliners. This is the McGregor versus I don't know anyone else in boxing. This is the Manny Pacquiao. This is the Tyson. Linebackers, nickel defenders, wide receivers. That's coming up next week. This week, though, we're setting the stage with some of the players maybe up front or key reserve players on offense. And let's get into those. Let's get to the headliner of today's show, which is running back 3. We know that Penn State's 2 running backs are going to carry the load figuratively and literally for the offense. I have a story coming up this week of how to get Nick Singleton even more involved in the passing game, because fans want to know about that. Well, if you're going to rely on your running backs that much, you probably need a third one to be able to spell them, take some carries off in non-conference games, blowout games, reserve, have a key role in the offense. So we're going to be talking about those players right now. So Nate, the obvious name to start with is the player that every fan has wondered if he's going to play receiver this year, which is Quentin Martin.
Yep.
Could be Andrew Olesh, but obviously we're talking about running back, so Quentin Martin. Where do you view the starting point for this RB3 battle? Where do you view kind of the expectation of the role and how you see that role in the offense before we decide who might fill it after this next couple of weeks?
I think it's maybe more important than people give credit to. I think that Trey Potts was kind of proof a couple of years ago that they will involve and they want to involve a guy beyond the duo of Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen. But I think there's another angle to it, which is the players themselves and their motivations to be that guy. Mm-hmm. You have to, I'm not saying it's backup quarterback who gets mop-up duty, but it is, look, this is what your role is going to be. You're not going to be the guy, but there is opportunity there for the person who beats out the other guys in preseason camp to earn those reps, right? Like, it's a razor's edge there of, there is opportunity. It's not going to be a lot, but somebody who's motivated to go get it can kind of set themselves up well, I think, for really their career at Penn State. Because this is not just this year. This is, okay, what happens next year? And, running back's a tough position, right? Guys get dinged up all the time. Yeah. Who is in the best spot to kind of seamlessly fill in if something should happen during the course of the season?
And we've seen it happen. Like, this is not a supposition. Last year, Nick Singleton got banged up, never really ended his season. He, I think, missed one game. Kaytron Allen was banged up, played through it. And the effectiveness, you see kind of almost a one player getting better, getting healthier, and then he kind of takes a dip and the other one takes a step forward, which has been kind of the funniest thing to watch, Nate, of throughout their career. It has been like a horse race of Kaytron Allen's the lead back. They need to just give up on giving Nick Singleton carries. Nick Singleton has a great stretch of 4 games, and now Nick Singleton's obviously the more talented player. They need to stop with this 2 running back system. It's like, but guys, they both ran for 1,000 yards last year. Why are we constantly doing this? And we'll do this next year, by the way, once they're gone. The thing that I think you mentioned to me that's really important is trust with the coaching staff, because playing time builds trust. We've seen it. Like, as much as the coaches know way more than us about these players because they're at practice and they see how they do in non-game situations. We've talked about here, there's always that 10% that you don't know when the lights come on. And so if you win that role this year, you probably have a leg up for the actual competition that matters to you for the starting role in 2026. So we don't want to get ahead of that, because the goal is to win a national championship this year for this team. So who fits that position battle best right now? So let's go through the contestants. And I'm just reading down the list here on the roster, not in any particular order other than the way they come up. We have Corey Smith, redshirt freshman Quentin Martin, redshirt sophomore Cam Wallace coming back from injury, and then we have Tyke Hayes and Jabri Coleman, 2 freshmen on the roster. So those are the players. Jabri Coleman just got here in the summer, and Tyke Hayes was here in the spring. How do you handicap what you've seen of them so far as to where you think this battle begins, and who's the serious contenders on that list?
All 4. Legitimately, I think that you got to see where Cam Wallace is, right? By the end of spring, he was just starting to get going. He suffered a really tough injury, but I think he's being forgotten a little bit in this conversation just because he was out of sight, out of mind while he was recovering from like a very serious, 2 very serious injuries, right? Yeah. It wasn't just one, it was 2 in that play that happened. I mean, really, that was like September last year. Mm-hmm. So that's been a process for him to get back, but he had done enough at that point to, like, he already won that job once. So it's not nothing. He's there and he's equipped to be part of that conversation if he's healthy this summer, which I think he is. Corey Smith and Quentin Martin were the 2 guys last year who both came in and were freshmen, and Quentin couldn't stay healthy, I don't think, right? At least consistently through the course of the season. And that, I think, created a little bit of an opportunity for Corey. Both guys have needed to make progress in the weight room. Yeah. But I think it's kind of undeniable that both also have running back quality. I mean, like Katron Allen qualities to a certain extent in terms of their vision and how they see the field and how they act as running backs. But again, and this is such a Penn State thing that's been ingrained under James Franklin, is like, they're not going to put you on the field if you don't pass protect. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So both of those guys, I think, have strides to make, and it's going to be interesting to see between the 2 of them who emerges. Quentin Martin is obviously a guy in January and February. Chuck Losey was talking about it. Different coaches were talking about it. The light kind of coming on for him, and I think him valuing this. He talked about it himself when we had that media day for the rising redshirt freshman class. And then Tyke Hayes is a guy who has already flashed, right? He's already been on campus. He's had that opportunity to acclimate himself and get into this. I think you're more equipped to talk about what his strengths are as a player, but just generally speaking, my impression from the feedback that I've gotten is, he'll be a viable competitor, right? It's just it's like, hey, who's going to do this over the next 4 weeks? He's got the benefit of being a really good comparison to Katron Allen, except Katron Allen, who's been able to be in the weight room. This, as you mentioned, Katron Allen getting dinged up in the offseason and not really being able to apply himself in that way until this year. Tyke Hayes comes out of the gate hot here. Here's the interesting thing about this conversation, because there are differences between strength and size when it comes to football, and you want both. Like, ideally, you would have a 220-pound running. Ideally, you'd have Nick Singleton, 220 pounds, ungodly strong in the weight room, and can apply that mass and force to the ground to generate tackle breaking abilities. I'm just a little surprised looking at some of these guys on the roster. Quentin Martin,
I know he's probably made strides in terms of strength and changing over what that weight was into a stronger player, but he's the tallest running back on the roster, 6'1", 206. He's a very, like, kind of a rail thin build for a running back, even at 206 pounds, because I was, like, debating in my head whether he got big enough this offseason, and, like, 206 isn't small, but on his frame, it's been a bit of an interesting road for those two redshirt freshmen. Corey Smith, there's jokes of like making sure he's got as many calories as possible in the offseason because he needed to get better as well. And then you got Zakee Hayes, who's 2 inches shorter than Quentin Martin and about the same size, and he comes in looking like a Big Ten running back. So that trio of freshmen, redshirt and otherwise, last year, and this is just because we're all prisoners of the moment, Quentin Martin was the heir apparent, right? And now I think there's legitimate competition. And there will be legitimate competition next year. But this year, I would count Zakee Hayes as a legitimate threat if he can, as you mentioned, pass protection, learn the game of football to a deep level. If he can do the mental side of things, I think the physical side, he's big enough to participate. So, I don't have a lead back right now for the third back. I find this a really interesting battle. And the styles are different. So what are you looking for in the offense? That's the wild card to me, Nate, is what is Andy Kotelnicki looking for? Does he want to replicate what he's got in his starters? Or is there actually like a package, like a sub package of we have this skill that we want to use as our third running back that will complement and play off of Singleton and Allen? And how do we then force the defense into, oh no, we're wrong again. Here's an explosive play to the 8th option on the offense. So that to me is the biggest question I have is what are you looking for in the third running back?
What do Singleton and Allen not already cover?
Well, very little. That's I guess the point, but playing those skills off of one another. So, they're a great complement of the way I've seen it. Katron Allen is great between the tackles, great natural runner as we've talked about, and Singleton has a big play speed threat. So what they've done, what Andy Kotelnicki has done before is Nick Singleton is a speed threat to the perimeter, right? Jet sweeps, motion plays, jet motions through the backfield. So if you take bodies with him, now you've got a naturally really good runner coming up the middle with another body out of the box. Or maybe you've now inserted a corner instead of a linebacker into the fit. And oh no, Katron Allen is going to murder that guy with his shoulder pads. Do you want do you want speed on speed? Do you want to move Nick Singleton into that role and then have another player being the orbit player? Do you want to have 2 heavy setbacks, 2 between the tackles runners, which Singleton can do, by the way, but just what variables are you trying to mix together to create the conflict for the offense? Or here's another one. What if you have 3 running backs in the backfield and that's your new wildcat? You got now it's like true triple option football at that point.
I'm here for all of it. Let's see it. Of all the things that I will do or not do, it is doubt the creativity of Andy Kotelnicki. He's going to do some weird stuff. He likes doing weird stuff. There's going to be, we'll see.
Those are, by the way, just my thoughts, let alone what he's cooking up. Like, these are all just speculations of a dude who watches film, not a dude who creates the film for other people to watch.
I think that there's an element of respect, I'm not sure how to frame it. This idea that Tyler Warren was such a unicorn that he could be the only one who did a lot of random stuff, right? His versatility was like the only, I think that Andy Kotelnicki is, he likes toying with that, with putting defenses in conflict by expanding the possibilities of what specific players can do. Right. And so, to me, a thing that I'm very much looking forward to this season is seeing how Nick Singleton is used in the passing game, because I think it's going to be quite expansive, honestly. I think they're going to involve him quite a bit to that end.
So I looked this up, and this is a preview of the article. Maybe I'm giving it away, but I find it too interesting not to talk about here. If we look at, and this is kind of a rudimentary way of doing this, if we look at running backs that were part of the quarterback's first read in a progression, so that means like not it was designed to go to the running back necessarily, but was that player part of where the quarterback was looking on his first read? So the way a read works is maybe you have a guy a defender's being high load, right? So you have a receiver running a deep route and a guy running underneath. Singleton was top 5 in the nation in terms of being on the first read where he could get the football. How much more, Nate? How much more do you want to do that with a running back? That was my question for the article. Go check it out, bluewhiteillustrated.com. By the way, you can sign up for just $1 and get access to the first week of content for that $1. Then from there, you build annually. We think it's a great habit for you to get into, to go to bluewhiteillustrated.com for the full football season to read some of Nate's stuff. Nate and I always talk. We're chatters. So we're pressing up on time. We're going to put this particular conversation down and get to one that I think has been brewing under the surface. And Nate, you've actually talked to Phil Trautwein to get some of the quotes this offseason that have sparked this conversation. It's the right tackle. Nolan Rucci played fairly well in the playoffs. Anthony Donko was a breakout offensive lineman to start the year. Now they got both of those guys healthy, presumably, coming into camp. We saw Anthony Donko, by the way, at lifting. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong. I'm just saying, until fully everyone's out there, I don't want to make any speculations about the availability. James Franklin said they're going to be available. Anyway, the point is they got 2 right tackles. And I don't think even this year we've heard Phil Trautwein fully express a plan of here's what's going to happen with Anthony Donko and Nolan Rucci. So how do you view those comments? And if you wouldn't mind sharing those of what Phil Trautwein's talked about at that right tackle spot.
You're going to have to refresh my memory on what he said about right tackle, because I think that he mentioned Vega having position flexibility is the one big thing that he's talked about throughout the offensive line. And I think that maybe the outside perspective on this is that it has to be one or the other, and that it has to be like 1A and 1B, and maybe that there's a rotation at that specific position. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that you could see that position flexibility come into play and have like almost 3-4 guys kind of rotating between those two positions on the right side of the offensive line.
Yeah, and I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off because that brings in the right guard conversation. I think there's been this understanding, reasonably so, because he's taken all the snaps because there was nobody available because Donko and other players were out in the spring, that Cooper Cousins is just going to walk to that right guard spot and be the starter. To what Phil Trautwein said this offseason multiple times, he talked about Anthony Donko having guard versatility, having flexibility. He started his career as a guard to play on the inside. And so getting the best 5 out there, talking about position flexibility multiple times this year, he's kind of soft-sold the idea that Anthony Donko can play guard. So I find this whole thing very fascinating because that right side of the offensive line, potentially, if the coaching staff is true to their word and no position is guaranteed, and there is a competition for every spot, I think it's reasonable to say that right guard and right tackle are both right now, at the very least, up for grabs. Or at least there's a conversation about how you're going to work 6 players into 5 spots. And so that right tackle position, how that works out, I feel like determines the rest of it, which is why I stacked it that way on the show. Yep. Just, football. Like, I know that but you've watched enough football to know what you're looking at.
Don't be ridiculous.
Do you think it's a reasonable outcome that Anthony Donko isn't the starting right tackle? Because that's where this thing gets really interesting, is if Nolan Rucci, who is more of a one-position player, at 6'8", probably not going to play guard. He's got 1 year left before he has to go to the NFL. Is it a real possibility in your mind that he's the starting right tackle this year?
That he's not the starting right tackle?
That Anthony Donko isn't. I said it both ways.
Yeah. Sorry, the brain spinning. Look. Phil Trautwein has been consistent in his time at Penn State that it's getting the 5 best players on the field, but it's also getting the best combination of those players. So whatever the max, right? Like, yes, I think that there is room to hedge and room for flexibility. Absolutely. If Anthony Donko's best position long-term is right tackle, if he is the better option at the top of the right guard spot to fulfill that, then yeah, that's what they'll do. Like, I don't think that Phil Trautwein is rigid in his perception of like, I think he's intentionally flexible and has an intentionality to making sure that they've got combinations that can work. And look, he wants to play a ton of guys. Like, their preference would be to play 10 if they could, right? If those guys prove themselves capable and willing or able. So yeah, there is a lot of room there for toying with figuring out what works and going through. Somebody mentioned in the chat, and I think it's a great point. The buildup to Oregon offers Penn State an opportunity to get live reps with very little consequence or risk of consequence, right? Like, they can try different things in the preseason, aka the non-conference schedule, and figure stuff out and see what works and what doesn't.
That's, I think, the most interesting thing, and what I've been trying to work out is, to your point, they're going to play the best 5, but not every position is made the same. Right tackle is very important. I think we've seen over the years when Penn State does not have a strong bookend of tackles, where in big situations, great defensive ends have made game-changing plays against Penn State. I won't go into all of them. I don't need to rehash them. So there's that idea of right tackle is more important than right guard. No offense to right guard. So do we then have 2 guys that can play it equally well, or close enough then that we can toy around with having, the bizarro lineup? And then, as you pointed out, that it's not set in stone. So what we see in the non-conference, I guess I'm thinking, if Phil Trautwein, and these things will be worked out. This is the point of the training camp previews. These ideas, these concepts are going to be worked out over the next month. But it's a reasonable thing that I think we could see a lot of line combinations in the first month of the season, as you talked about. So I don't have a resolution on that, other than to say we started this offseason basically saying it's ridiculous to think Anthony Donko plays anything but right tackle. And now I don't know that that's true.
Yeah.
Because Phil Trautwein said it. Like, that's as close as that is. That's not us even speculating. That's not me just coming here and talking on the radio. Like, it's the dude who matters having that opinion of everything. Anyway, I'm setting up our next segment here right now because I enjoy this. That's today's training camp preview. We're going to get into Nate's conversations with the people that matter in the conversation about the conversation.
The conversation. About the conversation.
Nate Bauer is an esteemed reporter. He talks to people and finds out. Hold on, this is wrong. There we go. And finds the truth buried in all of the words. So, James, you've been rolling out most of your James Franklin conversation this week, right? As you're saving the good stuff here for the end of the summer, from what it seems like from this side. So you've outlined the loss to Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, and then some positional views of where he sees the roster this year. From that list of things, what was most fascinating? Did you find something meaningful in James Franklin's comments about how he personally overcame the loss to Notre Dame and how he moved on this offseason?
Yeah. The money quote, let's just get straight into it. The question was, are you over the Orange Bowl? And he talked for 5 minutes and then wrapped back to, so yes, to answer your question, yes. When somebody brings it up or I see something, does it still piss me off? Do I want to punch somebody in their face? Yes. Yes. So over it, but also it carries it with him to a certain extent. And I think everybody in the program does. And I think that that's healthy, right? It's been talked about so much to the point that it's cliche. This like revenge tour idea that Michigan had a few years ago, and Ohio State, right? Like kind of vanquishing their demons, but Penn State's got like a little bit of that. There's I don't think they're leaning into it quite as hard, but this notion of, hey, that they don't have any doubt internally that they belong, that they should be considered among the heavyweights of the sport this season. They have the personnel to do it. They've been there before. They felt like they could have won and should have won that Notre Dame game. And here you go. Right. This is the new shot at that. But they have to approach it from a 0-0 foundation. They don't get to start the season in the semifinal round of the college football playoff, right? They gotta get to the playoff and then see what happens. But there is certainly an intention within the program this offseason to prove those things again, right? Not just because they don't feel like they have to. They don't feel like there is a lingering doubt over what the quality of that team last year was, and that most of last year's team is back this year.
So the perception that they have to be the top team on their schedule is not an internally held one that creates doubt in terms of, oh, we haven't done it. Until we prove we can, we don't know if we can. They believe they can play and beat anybody. They just have to actually do it. That's that internal versus external perception, I think, of the program that causes friction with fans that has been in the chat here for, 30 minutes of the show today. Is that what you're trying to say here?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about the secondary. Another interesting conversation you had with James Franklin, and you talk about losing KJ Winston and Jalen Reed.
Yeah.
But Zakee Wheatley coming back. How important is that to this year's defense? And I guess here's my question. And this is not pertaining to what you talked about, but this is just kind of playing off of that conversation. He talks about like Zakee Wheatley being a guy nobody's talking about enough, right? And said the same thing about Zariah Fisher. Is that in terms of the production he's expecting? Like All-American, like what is the threshold for not talking about enough, and then the value of that player? Because there's two sides of that conversation of like, is this a first-round draft pick? Is this an All-American Big Ten player? Or just somebody who's going to be really important to your team?
I think it can encompass all of that. I don't know that he said Zakee isn't necessarily being talked about enough. I think King Mack is not being talked about enough. That being an offseason acquisition that, it's like he never left, right?
Okay.
Out of sight, out of mind last year, but was a guy that they were extremely high on when he left, right? It was, and you played it out last year, but like as soon as KJ got hurt, it was like, oh, King.
Right.
You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have gone to Alabama. That was a bad move for you.
Who could have seen that happen? Who could have predicted that? There's zero chance that anyone would have predicted that.
Well, and I'm just exacerbated by Winston getting hurt. So those two things, like he already would have been a big piece of the conversation because they're going to play safeties. Now he's back and he was hurt in the spring, but is healthy now. And they're very much anticipating him to be a huge piece of what happens in the secondary, whether it's as nickel or, pairing in the safety backfield with Zakee. But you also have to remember that Lane is going to be back there as well. And like there is a strength of, and I see this kind of throughout the defense of they're very high on really all of their starters. And yes, there's a push from the depth behind them of like kind of young, intriguing talent. This goes for a ton of different positions, but specifically in the secondary of like guys who maybe you're not going to see them on last year's rep count at the top. They weren't, but they did enough to put themselves in position to get that playing time in the first place, suggesting strongly that the coaching staff has evaluated them as legit. Like they feel really, these weren't default. Oh, you're only going to get in mop up time. It is, you belong on the field. You deserve the opportunity to play. And now those guys get to battle this preseason to really assert themselves and claim their positions for the season ahead.
What did he say about the receivers? Flipping to another article you wrote, great insight about the receivers that they brought in for Drew Allar to throw to, that environment we started the show talking about. What was his impression, and what was your impression of his comments about the receivers, especially those transfers?
Yeah, I think the thing that he's going to return to, and the thing that he has mentioned a few times, is the idea that production in the past matters and that it can play itself out on the field, right? If you've done it, when you watch, and I mean, you can talk about this, T. Frank, but when you watch Trevor Pena's film from Syracuse, are you blown away?
He's a good football player. Like he's a really good football player, and like I don't want to discredit that, but are you blown away? Like no, and I don't want to be. I'm not trying to be rude, but that was kind of the analysis. Is this is a guy who's going to be a part of a whole? He is not the singular reason for this team to be successful.
Yep. Quote, he's just very mature, very focused, very driven, very hardworking, very matter of fact, very no nonsense. He's been a captain, and the production matters, right? He's had really good production in a legitimate conference and did it against some big time opponents. And so I think some of the missteps that they've taken in the portal in the past, right? Look, the receiver position has been through the washer, right? Like it has had a ton of turnover, not just this past season, but over the last few seasons, 3-4 seasons.
Over the last
now.
3 years, I think they've had 10 players leave the room.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah. So, but point being, they feel confident in their acquisitions and their scouts of the acquisition based on the fact that the numbers are right in front of you. And yeah, there are times when they can be fool's gold, but in this case, they think that is ready to and able to translate to the field this season.
Yeah, and that's how we've been describing that trio on the show all offseason. This is professional receivers. These are guys that are going to play the position the right way, and you don't have a question about the floor of what they're capable of doing. And the whole floor versus conversation, the floor versus ceiling conversation that, again, creates a firestorm of comments whenever you talk about that. We're not going to get into that. Last thing, so we're here to the end of the show, Nate. Of that conversation you had with James Franklin that we didn't talk about, what do you think is the most interesting you want to get out of here on?
I mean, I feel like we've covered quite a bit of it.
All right. Well, then that'll do it for today's show. That's
Zariah Fisher. That's it. I'm done.
Zariah
Fisher. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a great place to end because, again, he mentioned some of that stuff in June as well, that Zariah Fisher is going to be a big part of the team. So what is coming up? You mentioned there's another one from James Franklin coming up today or this week.
Yeah, there's two more, one today, one tomorrow, and then he will take the podium in Las Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. So,
all right,
gonna wrap that up. And Andy Kotelnicki feature this week, Jim Knowles feature, and Drew Allar feature. Really over the next week and a half. So should be good.
And of course, you can check those out, Blue White Online, to get the features that Nate Bauer wrote for the magazine. The season preview magazine is out now. And Greg Pickle is currently out now. He's out of the office. He is, I think, in the air right now on the way to Vegas. So we'll have James Franklin's press conference here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel tomorrow. But he's not going to be on the live show. We're going to try and do an update Wednesday night. So just giving you the layout for what's going on the rest of the week here on the YouTube channel. We're going to try and do an update with Greg from Media Days after everything's wrapped up, get his perspective, and get some information for you here on the YouTube channel, along with those comments and conversations in the press conferences. I'll have the Monday live show at 10, TBD on what we're talking about, because all that information's coming out later in the day. But then I'm taking Thursday off. No show for the recruiting show. I know, Nate. I know. I already feel guilty about it. That's why we're doing the Wednesday night thing. So we'll have that for you. And then, of course, nothing Thursday, Friday, and then we'll be back full go for the 2025 season on Tuesday with our live show to preview training camp opening the next day. So I'm Thomas Ryan Carr for Nate Bauer. Nate, awesome. Thank you. This is a great conversation. As always, love talking to you here on the show. We'll be back tomorrow with a full day on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Talk to you then.